One of the top 4 strategies I recommend for ADHD women is mindfulness, but I can feel the "no, I can't do that" come up even before I finish saying the word. And that's why ADHD mindfulness is different, or at least it needs to be different so that ADHD women can actually experience the benefits of it. Because the truth is, you can't actually get the benefits out of practicing mindfulness unless you actually do it. So, in today's episode, we're going to explore how to practice mindfulness in a way that works with your ADHD brain so that you can reap the benefits too. Be sure to listen. Welcome to the Self Loved ADHD Woman's Way podcast. I'm your host, Jen Barnes. If you're an ADHD woman entrepreneur, ADHD adjacent, or ADHD ish, you've come to the right place. We'll dive deep into the unique challenges you face, from the inner turmoil to the outer obstacles. We'll blend neuroscience, IFS, and somatic healing and explore practical strategies to help you navigate the world of entrepreneurship with ADHD with greater ease and effectiveness. I'm glad you're here. Hey, it's Jen. I'm so glad you're here. I'm really excited to talk about this. I had a client actually request an audiobook on ADHD mindfulness, and I was like, I don't have one of those that I'm aware of, but I can do a podcast because she's like, what you just said was so helpful. I just need to remember it. So I figured, why make a video only for her when I can do a whole podcast episode to help all of you? So we're going to dig into mindfulness for ADHD. And I get it. If your brain is like, I can't. It makes sense because the way that we've been told to do mindfulness, or at least how our brains have interpreted it, is that we're supposed to somehow sit still and quietly and have this still mind. And that isn't really possible. Our brains, not just ADHD brains, but especially ADHD brains, think. That's what they do, is think. And so to expect that the thinking will just completely go away is unreasonable for the average person. Now, if you're going to move to an ashram and be a Buddhist monk or a yogi in an ashram, perhaps your mind will be a lot quieter. I'm not sure. It'll be loud at first and maybe quiet down over years. But for most of us, the reality is even if we've been practicing for a long time, we're still going to have noise in our brain. The practice isn't about making the noise go away. It's about learning how to deal with it so it doesn't burden us. And that is part of why this is such a strong practice for ADHD. We're going to get into what to do in just a moment. And I promise you, I'm actually going to give you how to practice mindfulness with ADHD. I do want to share how it can help the ADHD brain because I think it's important. So number one, it improves focus. I remember in 2006, I read a study where they looked at the brains of both new mindfulness practitioners as well as people who've been practicing for years, and that after 12 weeks in both groups, they found a change in their ability to pay attention. The part of the brain that helps pay attention had actually grown and then was stronger so they could direct their attention better. And with ADHD, this is even more important because we already struggle with determining where to put our attention and sustaining that attention. It's not that we can't pay attention, as you know, if you've ever been in a hyper focus on something you're interested in. It's that we struggle to regulate attention, and mindfulness teaches us how to do it. And in fact, it teaches us to do it by noticing when our thoughts distract us and bringing it back. So it's actually the distracting thoughts that are the practice. So if your thoughts are distracting you during mindfulness, you're doing it right. And this comes from Jon Kabat-Zinn. You don't have to just believe me, the guy who created mindfulness-based stress reduction. He also wrote a book, Wherever You Go, There You Are, which is the first mindfulness book I read. And it's perfect because it's got mini, little 2 and 3 page chapters on little tidbits on mindfulness. So great book if you're wanting to read something for additional support. Okay, so the other benefit of mindfulness, and I've talked about this recently somewhere, I can't remember where, is that it gives you space between an external event or maybe an internal event and your response. right? It creates space between the stimulus and the response. And the more you practice, the more you are able to choose your response to things instead of being so reactive. And it works because as you're practicing mindfulness, you're going to notice that you're actually witnessing yourself do things. There's a being aware of being aware. And that practice is what will help you in those moments of stressful experiences and being like, instead of being reactive, you'll have a little bit more space to pause and choose something different than maybe you would have chosen on a knee jerk reaction. Okay. So now we're going to look at how to practice mindfulness with an ADHD brain. Number one, as I said before, do not expect to quiet your mind or to sit completely still on a meditation cushion for hours. First of all, if you've never done that, you'll find that your legs fall asleep within a few minutes if you're not used to sitting crisscross applesauce or however you choose to sit. So it's not realistic. Just like you wouldn't go run a marathon on your first day of running, you're not going to expect yourself to meditate a quiet seated meditation for 30 minutes. It's just not realistic and not even necessary to reap the benefits of mindfulness. So, what I really want you to take from this step of it is that the point isn't to quiet your mind. Like I said, every time you notice you're distracted and bring your attention back, you're building your attention muscle, if you will. It's not a muscle, it's a part of the brain, but you're building your ability to pay attention. Just like with, let's say you're going to do bicep curls, right? Like at first you can only do, you do a few or with a lighter weight, and then in between you rest and your muscle builds back up from the micro tears of the exercise that you did. And over time, you'll be able to do more curls if you're going for endurance or with heavier weight if you're going for strength. And eventually, over time, you see more gains. The same is true with mindfulness. So we're going to start very entry level mindfulness so that it's accessible, not because, oh, I'm dumbing it down, but rather if we start with a seated practice on your meditation cushion, first of all, you probably have to buy a meditation cushion, but also you've probably tried that and been like, that's why mindfulness doesn't work. Well, it doesn't work because that's not, first of all, the only way to practice, and also not necessarily the best way with ADHD, especially at the beginning. So the first way to practice mindfulness is to focus on things outside of yourself. So things like doing 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, noticing different things with your senses. So you're going to notice 5 things that you see. So I see a lamp, my computer, my notebook, my mouse, and my water bottle. You can go slower than that. 4 things that you feel to the touch. You might do this with me now as I'm saying it. I feel my hair on my skin, the ring that's on me, my bracelet, and my necklace. You might notice 3 things you can hear. So I can hear my time timer ticking away. I can hear my own voice. And I kind of hear, I don't know, I always have kind of this noise in my head. So I kind of hear that too. So there's that. And if you can't come up with 3 or any number of anything, that's okay. Then notice 2 things that you smell. I smell flowers for some reason, which is weird. Maybe it's the stuff that they just used on my hair when I got my hair done. And I kind of smell my own bad breath. And then one thing that you taste, I taste the aftertaste of the chickpea chips I had. Great. Yum. So that's a mindfulness activity. You just did it. You could also do this with noticing an object. Now, you could pick any object that you have lying around. So I have a little like Buddha statue. So you can hold the object and just notice like the shape of it. This is a pretty intricate thing, so I could focus on this for a long time. If I chose something like my mouse, I could notice like the trackpad on the bottom, the on and off switch, the Apple logo, and you just be present with noticing. That's it. That's mindfulness. And what makes it mindfulness is every time you notice you get distracted, because it's not particularly interesting to look at your mouse and be present with everything you notice about it, right? Like I could notice it was cold in my hands. So you can notice other things besides what you see. then as soon as you get distracted, you go, oh, okay, I got distracted. I'm just going to bring my attention back to noticing the object that you chose and then keep noticing. And then, oh, your attention gets distracted. I'm going to bring it back and notice something else. And every time you do that, you're building your ability to direct and sustain your focus, which, if you watched my recent, I think it was a video I did, now I can't remember, on hyperfocus, maybe it was a email I sent out, but that is also can help you be able to direct hyperfocus more effectively. All right, phase 2. That is a great way to practice mindfulness, and that if that is all you ever do, it will help you tremendously. And if you're like, oh, I'd like to try some other things, you can start by doing movement practices with mindfulness. This is actually where I started mindfulness, although maybe mindful toothbrushing. I can't remember if I did mindful toothbrushing. That might be one option I did, or maybe I think I came up with that idea. I don't think my therapist did, but you could do mindful toothbrushing. So notice each and every tooth as you brush it when you notice that you're not paying attention to it, because come on, brushing teeth is boring for most people. Maybe not if you're a dentist. I don't know. But you notice each tooth and then you're like, oh, okay, I forgot to pay attention. And usually I notice I'm not paying attention when the little there's like a little beep when you're supposed to switch sides of your mouth with an automatic toothbrush. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's right. Pay attention. And so I'll just notice again. I'll notice the taste of the toothpaste. I'll notice it was pasty. Now it's getting foamy. And then I'm thinking about my cats. And then, oh, bring my attention back. And so that's a great way to practice mindfulness. You could also do this with walking. I started with running. So I was a runner back in the day. And when I would run, I would just pay attention to my feet hitting the pavement, the movement of my arms, and with my breath. And I would start to sync them up and notice them. I also used to have to run with music before I did trail running. And so I would notice the music. So that's another nice option. I eventually, when I taught indoor cycling, would guide us through a mindfulness exercise. You feel the ball of your foot on the metal part of the pedal, and you feel your quad muscles push down. And then on the back end of the pedal, you feel your heel pull up and your hamstring is helping. So just really noticing everything. Maybe you notice the gentle sway of your torso as you're cycling. So I don't recommend doing that if you're on a non-stationary bike, because you'll run into things. Been there, done that, seriously, ran into a bush. So, dear, my goodness. But that's another great option. And while I'm talking about, I mentioned music when I was talking about running, another great, going back to the first option, focusing on something external to you, another cool way to practice mindfulness with something external to you is to listen to a song and trace just one instrument or one singer in it. Is it Peter and the Wolf is the one? It's got the bassoon and the whatever. There's all the different things. That's a great one that they used to have us do in elementary school, not necessarily realizing we were practicing mindfulness or intentionally doing it, but you just follow one instrument the whole time. And when you get distracted, you come back and try and pick up where that instrument is. And again, not shaming ourselves when we get distracted, because that is the practice. You're going to get distracted. Just non-judgmentally bring your attention back. So I said, like with movement, you could do with walking or running. You could do a practice like yoga or Tai Chi or Qigong. All of those are movement-based mindfulness practices. Now, I want to say something before I get into another option you could experiment with if you've tried some of these first options and you feel like they're going well for you. Before I get into that, I want to say this. A question I often get asked is, what happened if I don't notice I've been distracted the whole time? That's okay. That's okay. As soon as you notice that you were not being mindful, whether that's at the end of it, the next day, or a week and a half later, you're going to go, oh, that's right. I'm going to bring my attention back. And you bring your attention back to whatever it was. Now, if it was running, you might have to just put your foot on the floor and feel your foot making contact or something like that. But just bringing your attention back then and letting it be. And then the next time you'll try and bring your attention back closer to when you did the mindfulness activity, and eventually during the mindfulness activity, so that eventually you'll be noticing, oh my gosh, it's so many times in a minute, the number of times you'll bring your attention back, especially with ADHD. Like, I don't know. It can be even every couple seconds, so it might even be, like, between 30 and 60 times in a minute at first, so there's no judgment there. Just know that is the practice. As you do that, though, you're gonna strengthen your attention, your ability to sustain, to focus, direct, and sustain your attention. That's what I'm trying to say. Now, if you're like, "Wow, those practices are great, they're going well, I really love mindfulness, I wanna get into something a little deeper with it," you can practice mindfulness meditation. Most meditation is mindfulness meditation. Now, you could do a guided meditation. I highly recommend Insight Timer for that. Like you have insight into something, is how that is. I'll try to remember to link that in the show notes or description if you're on YouTube. But Insight Timer has tens of thousands of free guided meditations. So that you could use that as a mindfulness meditation. Because I don't know about you, but when I listen to a guided mind meditation, I get distracted and stop listening for a bit. And so then every time that happens and you notice it, you go, oh, yeah, I'm just going to refocus on what they're saying. And then happens again, bring it back. So that's a great place to start. You could do that seated or lying in your bed. Another option is to do a seated meditation practice. And there are, oh my gosh, dozens, hundreds, maybe even thousands of ways to do this. I'm going to share a couple of favorites for kind of getting into it. But first, I want to say if you are going to sit on the floor, I recommend you sit up on something. And whether that is a couple of blankets underneath your hips, or you get a zafu. A zafu is like a round meditation cushion, or you sit on a chair or something with your feet on the floor. The reason I recommend that is because if your body's uncomfortable and you're in pain or your spine's going like this, it's going to be hard to focus on where you're trying to put your focus because your body's going to be so uncomfortable. I also want to say that it takes time building up to seated practices, especially if you're on the floor and crisscross applesauce, because our legs will fall asleep and our hips can get stiff. Unless you're like a loosey-goosey person, then I don't know, maybe you won't have that problem. But as someone who, even as a yoga teacher, has pretty tight body, I get pretty tight hips and stuff like that, I find that if I increase my meditation ever, I usually find a point where I'm like, "Oh, my legs have fallen asleep. Great. That doesn't feel good," or my hips feel really stiff getting up. So just I know with our brains, we're all or nothing. We like to go all out, go big or go home, and start gradually. Start with 1 or 2 minutes, maybe work up to 5, maybe 7, maybe 10, maybe 12 or more. It's up to you. But just adding a couple of minutes at a time is a great way to do it. So I'm going to share some of what I do. I can share what I do now, but it's kind of built up over time as I've practiced mindfulness. So I wouldn't recommend you start with it because there's no way I could have done that when I first started. But if you want to do seated mindfulness, one of the simplest ways to do, not necessarily easy, but simplest, is to focus on your breath. So you can sit down and it can be grounding to put your palms down on your legs. It's more opening if you put your palms up. So actually with ADHD, I really like my hands palm down. You don't have to, but I just find it helps me stay more grounded. It's also why you want your feet to be making contact with the floor. And then you just notice your breath. So I'm going to guide us through this for maybe a minute. I'll grab my stopwatch. So you're welcome to take a seat, feel your feet on the floor. And you might have your eyes opened or closed. I'll keep mine open since the camera's on. And maybe noticing your breath. One way to notice your breath might be to notice movement as you breathe. So you might notice your chest or your belly expand as you inhale, bringing breath in. You might notice them come in as you exhale. Maybe noticing that movement with your breath. And as soon as you get distracted, bring your attention back to your breath, just noticing how it moves. When you're distracted, bring your attention back. Each time you're distracted, bring your attention back. And if you're distracted from your breath, bring your attention back one last time. All right, we did it. So that was 1 minute of a mindfulness practice. Awesome. You did it. But if you were like, oh my gosh, that was like climbing Mount Everest, that's why I gave you some other things to try first and practice over time to build up that attention muscle, which isn't a muscle at all. That can be a nice one. Another thing I like doing with the breath is noticing light moving with the breath. And I actually personally like to add a mantra to this, but first I'll just tell you with light. So, one thing you can do is as you breathe in, you imagine light coming through the crown of your head, moving down the central channel of your spine, down into the earth, circling the core of the earth like you're growing roots and grounded. And then as you exhale, let that light come back up and rain out from your head all over you. You don't have to do that with your arms. I'm just demonstrating what the light is doing. And so you breathe in, let that light come from the crown of your head down through the central channel of your spine, from your root down into the earth, growing roots. And then on an exhale, you let it come back up the central channel of your spine and rain out over you from the crown of your head. And every time you get distracted, you bring your attention back. So I love that one. I find it awesome to practice. And then if you want to have something to focus your brain on also, like a word, the mantra "So hum" is basically a mantra. It means I am that I am. It basically is honoring our inner divinity, that we all have the divine within us. We all have an individual drop of universal consciousness, if you will. And so that's all "So hum" is. And if you're like, wow, Jen, that doesn't fit with me at all, then you don't have to use that. So that's one I like. Those are the ones I would start with for the different variations I gave you. I will tell you my practice has now evolved. My practice is pretty ADHD because it's like, oh, that's cool. I want to add that in. And oh, I want to add that in. So I have different things I do. I do an energy protection thing at the beginning. And then I actually do a breath technique called Nadi Shodhana, also known as alternate nostril breathing. This one might be nice for you to do before you practice any mindfulness, or at least before you practice seated mindfulness. The reason I say that is it is a balancing breath. And so it can kind of clear out some of the thoughts. You could also do like the calmness mudra to shake out some of that energy that you have, maybe an aura cleanse or something like that, and then shake it off. And either you could also do alternate nostril breathing. So, alternate nostril breathing, they usually have you starting with your right nostril. That's for most people. I was told because I tend towards anxiety to actually start with my left nostril. So, what we're going to do is we're going to breathe in through both nostrils. We're going to use our right hand, our thumb, and our ring finger. And we're going to, as we exhale, we'll close the right nostril. And then when we inhale, we'll inhale left and close it. And then as we exhale, we open it and exhale out. Then you'll inhale and then exhale opens. And so one is inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. I did that very fast. I wouldn't go that fast, but that was one. So you're going to do 12 when you do this. I wouldn't recommend more than 12 because it can be a pretty intense breath technique. So more than 12, you might notice you get dysregulated. But let's do a couple rounds together. We're not rounds, a few of those breaths together. We're not going to do 12. That would be it takes about 2 minutes. I don't know that anyone needs to do that right now. You're certainly welcome to pause the video if you want to keep going. But you're welcome to take your right hand and you can put your index finger and middle finger down like this. I find that incredibly uncomfortable for my hand. So my meditation teacher back in the days of my yoga teacher training said I could put mine on my forehead. So you can do that too. So you can rest your middle and index fingers on your forehead. Inhale through both nostrils. Use your right thumb to close your right nostril and exhale out your left nostril. And now we begin. Inhale left, close, open right, exhale right. Inhale right and then close. Open left, exhale left. That was one. Let's do two more. Inhale left, close, exhale right. Inhale right, close, exhale left. One more. Inhale left, exhale right. Inhale right, exhale left. So that was 3. So you would keep going until you get to 12. And then you stop by exhaling on the left. You can experiment with starting with your right nostril. If you tend towards anxiety, though, I recommend doing it that way. And a lot of ADHD women tend towards anxiety because we were undiagnosed. And so we have all this anxiety from trying to hold it together all these years. Okay, so I hope what you got from this is some great ways to start practicing mindfulness. That was my intention. But also to give yourself a stinking break and stop trying to just quiet your mind, because our minds are meant to think, and that's what they do. People in a coma even think. So that's not the point. The point is to notice distraction and bring our attention back. And through that practice, over and over and over again, over time, you will notice, probably actually just even in 12 weeks, according to the research, most people will notice change in their ability to direct their attention and sustain their focus. And if you're on my email list, I have an email coming out this Friday, 2 days from when this drops. So it will be the March 6th. I have an email coming out on hyperfocus. So if you're not part of my ADHD women, professional women's email club yet, there's a link in the description. You can quick join and make sure you get that email too. It does share some of these strategies as well. But thank you so much for being here. I hope you found this helpful and exciting. And you know what? I would love a favor. So I just gave you a great bunch of free stuff. I would love it if you would subscribe or follow this podcast or like it, comment, and if you shared it with another ADHD woman, that would be the best. So thank you so much and take good care.